You're listening to Secrets for Scaling, a Gecko Board podcast that explores the growth secrets of successful founders and CEOs. For this episode, we spoke with Sharon, CEO and co-founder of Mobilize. Hi, Sharon. Welcome to Secrets for Scaling.
Hey, Shannon. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, thanks so much for being here. So to kick things off, can you tell us a bit about what Mobilize is and who your customers are?
Definitely. So Mobilize is the first group communication solution focused on helping businesses to communicate with their external network. So if you think about like businesses today and you think about like the type of stakeholders that they're communicating with, they usually communicate with their teams, right? So you have internal collaboration and you have a lot of communication going out to your customers or prospects, a lot of marketing and support. But companies today also rely on a really important layer of external contributors, stakeholders, communities. It could be anything from brand ambassadors, resellers, affiliates, developer relations, etc. We really help those companies to communicate with those external communities. So that's our focus, and that's what we're helping. So our customers could be anyone from Microsoft that is working with us to manage their accelerators and network of entrepreneurs, the United Nations that is working with us on Mobilize to organize and communicate with their sustainability research around the world, all the way to Docker and their developer relations, Prezi and Meetup with their brand ambassadors. So it really varies.
And when was Mobilize founded?
So we founded the company about 2.5 years ago. Since then, we're kind of like taking step by step in order to figure out like how to design a product, what exactly are we giving as a core product, and then now we're expanding it to more use cases.
Can you share a little bit about where the idea came from for Mobilize first?
Yeah, definitely. It actually is a nice mix of my own background. Throughout my entire career, I always mixed between two things. So one of it is I was always in tech since I'm really young. I was always involved with different tech companies, doing everything from business development to marketing to sales. And that's where I've seen like the different communication solutions that there are for internal teams and for marketing or customer support. And that's where I got really exposed to different technologies. But in the same time, I was also doing a lot of public advocacy, social entrepreneurship, organizing big conferences, organizing a lot of delegations and different social projects. And that's when I've seen the power of people coming together. That's what I've seen, like, okay, what does it mean when I bring in 150 students from all around the world to protest in the United Nations and to raise awareness for different topics. So what is this power of this community? And I was really amazed to see like what people can achieve when they're joining forces, but I also seen what limited tools they have and the fact that we always needed to rely on like spreadsheets and Google groups and mailing lists in order to communicate with that amazing community. So taking kind of like the insights that I had from tech industry, looking into those use cases of how to organize a community, started raising kind of like, I started building this idea. Later on, I joined actually a crowdsourcing company, and I've seen that businesses now have the same challenge because businesses now do rely as well on external communities. So it becomes more and more business critical to know how to leverage external human resource. And that's kind of like where all those different dots connected. And I understood that the economy needs such a tool as well because businesses rely also on communities and there are no tools out there. So that's kind of like where we really started designing the product.
And where's Mobilize now? Like what stage is it at in terms of traction?
So in the first year and a half, I would say, since it's such a new category and such a new concept, we've been working in early stage, like early beta, stealth mode even. We had a gateway on our website and we handpicked the users and the communities that will work with us and collaborate with us in order to build a product. So we're very picky in terms of like the different use cases and the different customers that we brought on board. And each one of them has a strong partnership, design partnership with us. So we designed a product to really match like to those initial use cases. I would say 10 months ago, we finally opened the product and the access to the product to everyone else with the mindset that thanks to all those amazing partners that we had in the beginning, now a lot of smaller organizations, the ones that also have maybe lower budgets, etc., can also enjoy the product. And that's basically was what we wanted to do, is like we wanted to work with the United Nations and Docker and Microsoft and Siemens and MasterCard and all those really big, amazing companies in order to build and design a product, to get all the best practices into the product, so that now every business and every group and every community manager can enjoy those capabilities too. So now we are out of beta for about 10 months. We also launched like new pricing that enables smaller organizations to get in, and we've grown our team. So we've done our Series A about like 9 months ago. And since then, we grew to over 150 customers, and our team grew from 7 people to 30 people in the last actually quarter.
Wow, that's amazing. That's incredible. Congratulations on the Series A and all the growth.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a journey.
I would love to unpack that a little bit. Just going back to when you're getting the beta customers and identifying what those first use cases were. What'd that process look like? How do you decide who those first beta customers were?
We had a lot of assumptions about like who are the tech-savvy early adopters, companies that really rely on those external use cases, on external networks, and those external networks are business critical for them. And once we identified it by research, what we've done is that we just did a lot of business development, a lot of cold emailing. Emails are very, very simple in terms of like, we're a new startup. We really are passionate about building a solution to help you organize and communicate with your network and communities. We love what we see about your community, and we really research each one that we contacted. We would love to show you what we're working on and to learn more about your needs. We also, from day one, kind of got a good inbound, a good traction, like from organic traction. So that also helped to just kind of handpick who is relevant and who is not for that early stage. We then went step by step to do like what we call the CEO product program, and just we sat with those customers. We had bi-weekly meetings with them in which we went and like asked a bunch of questions, and every stage we presented a plan, we presented features, and said, well, if we do that, would you buy an annual deal in this price, or is this what's missing for you, etc. And we knew that like if we go and we bring in that customer, then a lot of companies like them could come in later on, because like they helped us to identify what we were building. And it really worked with a lot of the different use cases. When we started with Docker as a design partner for developer relation communities, immediately afterwards, we started seeing Looker coming on board in Salesforce, and that's because they really enjoy the fact that we defined and designed this especially for their needs. So that was kind of like the process. We're still doing that sometimes with new use cases. We love that approach. It's very, very focused. But we also take advantage. Sometimes we're opportunistic about like new use cases that we never thought about. We love to explore that as well and just see where is the fit, and then do a research. You said you also got some inbound traction. Where did that come from? It started with a pretty funny incident in which like we did our seed funding PR, and we did that with VentureBeat. So they announced our seed funding, and when they announced it, the title that they chose was Mobilize, a better alternative to Google Groups. I must say that at the first second I saw it, I was like, oh my God, that's like such a small portion of what we do. I didn't really like that title. What happened afterwards was just amazing. For more than a year, we just continued getting hundreds of leads a month just from this article. It basically ranked first when you looked for Google Group alternatives. So we were ranked first, and we're still ranked first when you're looking for Google Group alternatives. It brought to us a lot of different use cases, which we learned a lot from a lot about the market from that. I would say that this is actually one of the key learnings that we had in terms of keywords and messaging is sometimes you need to go to just your core product, the core value propositions, and just talk about it in the most simple way possible. So today we're actually pretty proud of the fact that we're like a Google group on steroids or a mailing list on steroids, because that's what people use and that's what they're looking for alternatives to. So that was one key learning. Another thing that happens with our organic traction is obviously when someone uses Mobilize, he uses Mobilize to communicate with, let's say, 1,000 people, right? 1,000 brand ambassadors or developers or resellers, affiliates, etc. So when they're communicating with them, those people get exposed to Mobilize, and that's the point in which the ones that have a network of their own can say, hey, I actually also need to organize my own community. So they're site switching from a user and a member all the way to a manager of their own group. So that's another organic traction that we've seen. And then obviously people talk to each other. So people ask each other, what do you use for managing your group, and then they refer to one another.
So when you launched from beta to public, how do you know it was time?
The thing about like how to choose when moving from early like private beta to open beta or just to launch it is also the moment in which you know that your onboarding is good. So we've been testing our onboarding funnel. We've been testing first impression. Like, do people like when they sign up on the website and they start creating their own network, do they understand the value proposition of Mobilize or not? Like, does it take them time to understand what they were able to give them? And investing in onboarding takes a lot of time. Like, you can improve your onboarding process basically forever. What we wanted to make sure is that we're creating an onboarding process that we're proud of, that conveys the value. Once we felt more comfortable about it and we saw that we have a good conversion rate, even if it's not yet where we want it to be, but it's a good start, then we also said, okay, now we're ready to launch it.
Going back a bit, you went from 7 to 30 people very quickly. Who were those people that you hired? Who were some of the first people you hired in that growth spurt?
So obviously, once you get like the Series A, the first thing you want to do is to grow your dev team. It's like always like, okay, we have more stuff to build. Let's just get like all those amazing engineers in-house and start building. So I would say that the first team that grew very fast was our dev team. But actually before that, now that I'm thinking about it, the first hire we had was our head of product. That was actually the first hire. So I'm kind of like founder and VP product de facto, like doing all the outbound like product like research and talking to customers, sitting on sales calls, learning more and building the roadmap or coming with like new ideas. What we've seen is that once we wanted to scale, we said before we're bringing actually all the engineers, we really want to make sure that we're bringing a good head of product that is taking all those ideas and turning them into measurable progress. So whatever we want to build need to have analytics behind it and need to show like how is it reflected on our, like, does the growth is reflected on our metrics, etc. Like, do we see like this feature impacting our revenue growth? Do we see it impacting our retention or activation or any other metric that we decided is important for us? So our head of product is very much like is super data driven, immediately created a lot of dashboards for us, a lot of different like brought in a lot of different data points so we can look at it. Whatever we do is always measured now. And I think that was the first thing we wanted to do, is we wanted to know that whatever we're building needs to be aligned with our goals. So, and obviously also we wanted to have a product that can build a strong product team and that can work with the dev team, especially because we're a segmented company. Our headquarters is here in San Francisco, where we have sales and marketing, customer success. And in Israel, we have our product and engineering team. So we also needed to bridge that gap. So that was the first hire. Then my amazing co-founder and CTO built a dev team and brought in a lot of amazing engineers. While here, in order to grow our US kind of like headquarters, we had already 2 first hires that are more like, I would say, really kind of like jack of all trades. They just did everything in the first year and a half. Like they've touched anything from prospecting, sales, demos, customer success, like marketing, whatever you want, they've done it, events. So those were like our first hires, but then we wanted to start bringing in people that will take specific roles and would have their specific expertise. Obviously, still in this stage, people wear many hats, but they wear a bit less hats than those first two hires that we had. And now, the first thing I've done actually that I'm originally, as you can understand from my accent, I'm not from the Bay Area or from United States, so I'm originally from Israel. And when I wanted to build a team, I found that it's one thing to find like those generalists. It's another thing to find within your network all those amazing individuals that are like specialized in specific things and building a bigger team and managing that bigger team. One of the first things I've done, and I'm very, very happy about it, is that I brought in a COO that our investors helped us find her, and she's kind of like a seasonal executive. She's done a lot. She recruited big teams and trained them, and I think that was really just making sure that the infrastructure is built right. Bringing that type of person is always useful for a CEO there is more like product driven and visionary, etc., but wants also someone next to him that really can oversee the entire business operation. So that's the first thing we've done. And then since then, and as I said, it's less than a quarter actually when we ramped up our business operations here, we brought in 3 salespeople. One of them is an SDR, and the other one are account executives. 3 marketing people, everything from demand gen, content marketing, and community, and a customer success manager. So all of a sudden, that team really grew by far. Really grew like within like a few weeks. So that was something that was really amazing to see. But now we have all the right people in place. Which leads obviously to the next challenge of how do you make sure that they're doing the right stuff and working all together, like, and keeping like this synchronicity.
Which leads to my next question. How have you overcome that challenge? It sounds like you've hired great people who are building the processes that will help the company scale, which is super important, right?
Yeah.
How do you keep them focused on that? And how do you align the whole team across all these departments?
Yeah.
Especially across locations. I don't think I realized that you had 2 different offices. I'd love to hear a bit more about that as well.
I must say that was like kind of overwhelming for me at the moment when we grew our team from like 7 people to 30 people. I was actually on a trip. We had some conferences in London, and then I was back in Israel for a few weeks to meet the new team, and in the same time we had like all the team built here. So I actually, it was like it was even like the feeling of like lack of control was amplified at that moment because I was also traveling, and I knew that right now like we grew to 30 people globally, and obviously it's also very heavy on the budget once you do it. Now you're thinking, okay, I got all those amazing people. Each one of them has tremendous potential, and how do you unlock that? How do you get them to work together? So by being away and by traveling at that time, just the fear of not unlocking that potential and not enabling them to work collaboratively was really amplified. So I was at that time, I immediately like stop and say, okay, I need to learn how to deal with this now. And I started reading a lot of things about like leadership and team leadership and building strong global teams, etc. I also obviously consulted with a lot of my friends that are CEOs of bigger companies. And one of the books that really impacted me the most is called Team of Teams. And it's actually it's written by General McChrystal. He headed the entire operations against Al-Qaeda in Iraq and Afghanistan. And it's funny to read from him how to manage a startup team. But what I've learned from that book is that actually, I read it at the same time also Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh from Zappos. And it's funny how like they're both coming from really different perspectives and goals, but they had the same insights about how do you build a team. And one of the first things that they've talked about is shared consciousness. First thing you need to make sure is that everyone have the same goal, that they know exactly what their goals are. And the second thing is that they know the same things. So they know they have the same information. Because if they don't have the same information, then they will do different things. They won't get to the same conclusions, and then they will have those silos between them. So knowing those two key things that were really important for us was, what is your goal, creating shared consciousness, so basically sharing information. And the third thing was all about purpose. So it's not just the goals in terms of metrics, it's also goals in terms of vision, and making sure that everyone are aligned around this vision. Once I read both of those books and a lot of other articles, etc., I've decided that what I want to create is taking Google's OKR system. I just said, let's talk first of all about the objectives. And I started creating this presentation, which basically said, okay, what are the objectives of the company throughout 2017? It was really big vision, big sentences, I would say, type of objectives. One of them was we want to basically build the category and help professionals in the community industry to be better. We want to help build this industry. We want to bring them more best practices. And we obviously want to be the leader in terms of the solution that we provide. The other one was we want to be the most, we want to have high usage in terms of the fact that people can use Mobilize for any group or community that they need to communicate with. So we wanted to see product changing in a certain way. And the third one is that we wanted to create a really high velocity sales model. We wanted to see our revenue engine functioning, so by the end of the year we can go and say, okay, now we're just pouring more fuel into this, but we know how the engine works. And putting those objectives helps us just frame the conversation and make sure that everyone are aligned to where we're going. And we actually opened this to the team and said, these are our objective. How do you feel about it? Now, obviously, those objectives were not new. What they were is that they were a reflection of part of my investment deck. So in my investment deck, I had to go and talk to investors and to share with them our plans. And I always think that an investment deck is usually really good just to articulate your vision. It's the only time that you had to sit, that you really need to sit and put in words and numbers and graphs, what are you planning to do? And what we've done is that we immediately started a new routine, and for all those 30 people, one thing is very clear. The first meeting they have in their first day is with me. What we are doing is that I open the investment deck. Beside maybe 2 slides about maybe the P&L, we're sharing everything. I go and I pitch them as if I'm pitching now my next investor. And the reason for that is because we believe that they are the most important shareholders that we have. And it's really important that they will be super aligned about our vision, where we're going, how do we think that we will get there. So that's the first meeting. And that's exactly the first thing that I mentioned about making sure that everyone has the same sense of purpose and a shared consciousness. Second thing that we're doing is, and that was I would say more into the tactics. The tactics that we started doing is we basically said, let's take the big plan, the business model, and start breaking it into smaller chunks. If we now look at the overall business plan and we say we need to get to X ARR, annual recurring revenue, by December 2017, it could be super overwhelming for the team to just show them the number. But if I go and back into it and reverse engineer into it, then what I can do is really say, okay, guys, this is how each one of you contributes to that effort. So once we show the objectives that I mentioned before, the second thing that we've shown is just the business model. And we show this, actually the spreadsheet, and we show the funnel. Okay, if we get, according to the numbers we've seen today, until today, according to benchmarks from the industry, according to our pricing model, etc., if we want to get to this number, I want to show you how I got to that number, so you know your role in it. Because eventually, team is actually kind of like a machine. You need to make sure that everyone is working and taking their position and contributing to their own specific domain. So for example, our funnel shows that you get certain traffic. We convert at a certain rate, which we always converted to like signups. We know how many of them become activated accounts, and we know how many of the activated accounts become customers. We also know how many of those customers are low touch, no touch, paying $50 per month versus inside sales opportunities that could convert in $400 to $1,000 per month. Knowing all of that, like we just build that funnel, we just saw, obviously then you also need to take into account customer success and churn and upsell, etc. So each one needs to contribute to that model. And what we've done is that once we've created this funnel as part of our business model and our revenue model, I just created another field next to those metrics, like another column, and I just wrote in each one, next to each one of those items, which team or which person owns that. Our demand gen person, she owns the traffic. She also owns, together with content, the website conversions. But then conversion to active is owned not only by marketing, but also by product. And then if you go lower than that, like from active to paying, that's when you split it in between product and marketing versus inside sales. Inside sales own some of like the sales, some of the revenue, because they own the bigger accounts, and basically product and marketing own the self-service. And then we look at like customer success. What customer success owns, they own the churn rate and the retention. And when you show them that and you say, guys, in order for all of this to work, each one of you just take ownership of what you do. Share your knowledge, share your experiences, share what insights you get, but you own this. And then we show them like quarter by quarter, okay, so this quarter, this is, let's say, the customer success, this is your retention rate that you need to keep, this is the churn rate that you need to keep. And that's only for 3 months ahead because we're still in learning process, right? Now, what it helps us is that once we see that something is not working, for example, last month we saw that the revenue was a bit lower than what we expected. Now we're looking at those and we're saying, okay, now let's go back to the model. What exactly is broken here? Instead of just like assuming things that are really up there in the air, we said, let's look at the model. Okay, we get the right traffic, we get the right conversion rate on the website, and then to active, and we get also the right conversion rate into paying, but they're paying less. Okay, that's when things are broken. Why are they paying? Like, why are we getting those small deals? We're getting only these type of deals instead of these ones. And all of a sudden, you can go and once you found this like broken link in the chain, then now you're fixing only that. And each month, each week, actually, we see that we're fixing a different link. And that's kind of like my goal, is like just to make sure that like we keep our eyes on that, on what's going on in the funnel, what's going on in this engine, and we fix the right links and we optimize them until this entire thing is working as a scalable engine.
It sounds like you take a very collaborative and iterative approach. I really like how you give your each department and people that ownership. Have you found that to be very effective in terms of having them reach their targets?
Yes, we found that basically when people have ownership, then they come up with new ideas, they try different things. It doesn't rely only on one person or a few people to come up with new ideas. You really have like a lot of people contributing to innovation, and that's what you want to do, especially when you're in such a young stage. Like each one of those team members are supposed to grow into team leaders. And if they don't do it themselves, and if they don't take that ownership, then it will be harder for them to train new people. And I think that that's what I really love about early stage startups and the team that you're building, is that you have this feeling about like we all get our hands super dirty trying everything, and then when we know what works, then we can just amplify it and grow it and duplicate and replicate. So and those people, each one of them has this sense of like I made this happen, and that's what I want them to know and feel.
It sounds like each area is its own well-oiled machine. How do you keep them all unified and focus on those main objectives you talked about earlier?
Yeah.
The ones that are in your pitch deck, for example.
Yeah, definitely. So we have three different tools that we're using. And when I mean tools, I actually mean like methodologies. So we've created 3 different touch points in which we sync as a team. One of it is that for motivation and for removing roadblocks, we have every day a stand-up meeting. And that meeting is usually, and I mean about like obviously the dev and product have that all the time and always had it, but now we started implementing that also within the business side here in San Francisco. So we have that stand-up meeting. It's 10 to 15 minutes. Each one is saying what they're working on, what is blocking them. This way we keep that shared consciousness, and we also help each other. So we know like where each one is blocked and how we can contribute and help him or her. Then we also have a weekly business meeting in which each one shares exactly where are they versus their goals. So the numbers that I shared before, like where are they in terms of conversion rate or calls made or ARR, MRR, churn rate, retention, etc. So each one of them, each department, each team shares their own numbers. And that happens on a weekly basis with all the business team, marketing and sales and customer success. So we keep that shared consciousness, and they basically just report, and then we keep the last 30 minutes for discussion. And that really helps, like I think, to identify the broken links and to fix them. And then eventually we have a monthly global team meeting. We have a weekly global team meeting, but on a monthly basis, we're sharing how the month looks like. We're sharing the numbers from each side. Each team is sharing their own numbers, how they're matching up to their goals, and it's the same idea. And also, they do some show and tell in terms of like what are the campaigns and activities and projects we're working on, so each one can know like what is going on within the rest of the team. So we have all of that. We obviously have tons of dashboards that help us look at the numbers and see what we're doing in different perspectives.
If you had to give one piece of advice to a fellow founder who's where you were 6 months ago or a year ago, what would that be?
No matter what, don't lose the momentum. Just don't lose the momentum. There is a lot of different distractions within a company, within a startup, and scaling could really get you off track. It sometimes derails you. It's like the growth of a startup going from seed to Series A could look either exponential, or it could look as the next step. You're just jumping a step. So you will have this like flat, waiting, growing, building, and then all of a sudden you start growing. Or you could have that exponential growth. So you continue growing, but like slowly. And I think that companies that grow and move from seed to Series A find themselves all of a sudden distracted by like growth and training and recruiting people and figuring out new funnels and bringing in a new business model, a new pricing. And there's so many things that you want to do in order to grow. If you have the patience from your investors or your team, etc., and you're preparing all of them that now this is the time that we invest in growth, and then we'll have the next leap. It will be a growth by a leap, not an exponential growth, then maybe you're good. But I believe now, like something that I didn't know a year ago, it's just like it's always good not just to think about the next leap, but just to continue the momentum. I think it's almost better to just have like 5% incremental like growth. And I mean like whatever you've done this month, do 5% or even 2% better this month. Like if you do that, I think that it's just better than stopping everything, building a huge team, getting everything in place, like and then resuming. kind of like resume and go back and try to keep them like then kind of like try to grow again. So it sounds maybe a bit abstract, but I assume that CEOs and founders will understand what I mean. The bottom line is if you can continue growing step by step and just add in another person, another marketing person, each time starting a new program instead of just like doing everything all at once, I think that that's always a better way to grow, and because it keeps your momentum going. And there is nothing more important to a startup than a momentum.
Thank you for listening to Gecko Board's Secrets for Scaling podcast. If you know of someone who you think would be a great guest for Secrets for Scaling, or if you want to share your own scaling story, email me anytime at shannon@geckoboard.com. We'd love to have you. Hope to catch you next time.